Hello, CBC. It's my turn to give the Devo. We're going to look at Luke 12, beginning in verse 22 and ending in verse 34. Just something that kind of came into my mind as you look at where we are today, just in the world, and a lot of what we see happening inside of many of us, just this fear and this worry about being able to control, wanting to be able to control what we can't control, and finding ourselves in a place where we just need to trust the Lord to provide for us. So this is beginning in verse 22, speaks to that. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, nor about the body, what you will put on. Life is more than food, and the body is more than clothing. Consider the ravens, for they neither sow nor reap, which have neither storehouse nor barn, and God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than the birds?" It's interesting too that ravens are kind of greedy little things. I don't know, that's the point he's making. It's just a side thing I was kind of thinking of. Like they're known to be very, they get after it. You guys have run into them. But I can relate to that, and it's just interesting that even as being kind of the greedy creatures they are, and I don't know that they take care of their young very well either, from what I could kind of piece together. They're just, whatever word I'm trying to find, but they are kind of like us, and God takes care of them, even though they're given to greed, I guess is what I'm saying. He takes care of them. Interesting choice. And then verse 25, he says this, "And which of you by worrying can add 1 cubit to his stature?" And if you do a little bit of digging there, really the point is, what Jesus is trying to say by cubit measurement is, rather than like add height to your body, it's really talking about adding length to your life. It's saying, like, which one of you can add a single second, a single hour, a single moment to the days that you have numbered? You can't. That's outside of our wheelhouse. So then he goes on to say, if then you're not able to do the least, if you can't even extend the amount of time you live, ultimately, why are you anxious for the rest? And to me, I found, even just thinking on that, I found a lot of comfort. You know, we're told that God has our days numbered. He knows what medical advancements help, don't help, etc. It's not like he's surprised by it, or that we come up with some kind of solution that extends something beyond what he had planned. We know that's not the case. So he's saying, hey, look, if you don't get to number your days, then realize that even the rest of this stuff, you have no business concerning yourself worrying about. Goes on to say in verse 27, consider the lilies, how they grow, how they neither toil nor spin, and yet I say to you, even Solomon, remember King Solomon, wealthiest guy there was, in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. If then God so clothes the grass, which today is in the field and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, they'd heat it up to warm themselves up once it got old. How much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? And do not seek what you should eat or what you should drink, nor have an anxious mind, for all these things the nations of the world seek after, and your Father knows that you need these things. For Jesus, as he's talking to the disciples, he's calling them to a way of life like he lived, where they're kind of living moment to moment, going to the next place that they're needed, and sharing with the people that will respond, and when they won't respond, they're supposed to keep going. Just kind of that whole approach to ministry. And so, you know, for them, it really is important to have food. I would tell you it's the same for us. I think we're in a time where we can connect the dots really fast. You look at this COVID stuff, and then you look how that goes into losing jobs, and then the fear of like, well, I've lost my job, and then, I mean, it's not, for most of us, not a whole long period of time we have before it's like, if I don't have a job, I can't pay for all the things we need to pay for, which then ends up, and all of a sudden we are in a place we're talking about food, which we need to sustain life. Interesting that, you know, through this, God is the one that gives life, we know that, But he's demonstrating through this passage. I mean, he's the one that sustains life. He's the one that keeps us alive. Yeah, so he says, verse 31. He tells us what to do. He's like, hey, don't do what the nations do. Don't be worried and fearful and anxious. But then verse 31, he says this, but seek the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added to you. Keep a priority on Jesus and his kingdom, the coming kingdom that is sure to come at some point. And he says, do not fear, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure, and he says this, to give you the kingdom. Sell what you have and give alms. Provide yourselves money bags which do not grow old, a treasure in the heavens that does not fail, where no thief approaches nor moth destroys. I don't know if you guys have ever considered what kind of happens to you as you invest in something. You know, if it's like retirement, saving for a car, saving for a house, or whatever it is, something materialistically that we look toward. As you watch it build, or as you watch it grow, there is an amount of excitement toward that. And there's an amount of our heart that goes into that. And that's what he's saying here, like transfer what you have stored up here, transfer it to a place where it actually lasts. It's not that God's asking us to just completely go without. He's just saying, man, put your, well, that's the next verse says it, put your treasure right where it will stay. And that's what he says in verse 34. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And so all that to say, you know, as we look through that passage, I hope what you notice is that God is inviting us. And Jesus is saying, don't worry, because it doesn't help. Worrying has never added a single moment to anybody's day or anybody's life. But I will say, science kind of has proven that worrying actually can limit your life. At least at the very least, it will make you miserable, and it doesn't help anything. That's what he's saying. A lot of us, this is not new, but I think it's worth considering where you have your mind focused. When you're going through the day and you find yourself overwhelmed, or you find yourself paralyzed, or fear is just gripping you, consider the thoughts you've been thinking leading up to that, for however long you've been thinking those thoughts. And then be invited to put your treasure in heaven. It's not going to work here anyway, no matter what we have. And if we do have something that we've accumulated, and there is an amount of something we have to give, then do that. Give it to people. Spend it on people. We've heard many great sermons at our church about what that looks like to spend what we have on behalf of other people so that we can accumulate in heaven. And because it spreads the gospel. And we're building a kingdom that won't be shaken, that will not have problems. It'll be a perfect kingdom. We'll be so glad that we did the work needed to invest in that place. So I hope you are encouraged, and I just challenge you to consider where you have your treasure stored, because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Love you guys. Keep on keeping on. Be blessed.